Lovely, lovely people, and welcome to this week's episode of the Filmmakers Podcast. I'm Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director and producer, and this week on the Filmmakers Podcast we bring you one of the most critically acclaimed and beautiful films of the year, the magnificent American epic Train Dreams. And we have an incredible lineup for you. Joining us are the award-winning stars who brought this poetic story to life. First up, Dom sits down with the Oscar-nominated talent of Felicity Jones, who's known for Rogue One, Star Wars Story and The Theory of Everything, and the brilliant and magnetic Kerry Condon, the star of the Banshees of Inisherin and Better Call Saul. And then stick around because we dive into the director's chair with Clint Bentley, and after that, we're the film's stoic lead and exec producer, Joel Edgerton, whose credits include The Great Gatsby and Warrior. I'm still over in Bulgaria at the moment. There's a lot going on. We're in post heavily now for the supernatural horror Samadiva, which has been announced. So thank you for everyone who helped us make that and work on it and are still working on it right now. Hopefully the next couple of weeks we'll be locking picture, or certainly the first version of it. Okay, so Train Dreams, the movie, is adapted from Dennis Johnson's celebrated novella. It is an exquisite drama. It follows Robert Granier, played by Joel Edgerton, who's a logger and railroad worker in the Pacific Northwest of the early 20th century. It's powerful. It's a lyrical look at his life of love, devastating loss, and the silent strength it takes to survive in a world irrevocably transformed by progress. The buzz? It's deafening. Critics are calling it the best film of the year at Sundance Film Festival and a staggering work of cinema. So, you're now going to hear from the team about that lyrical cinematography by Adolfo Veloso. And when you watch the film, you'll hear the incredible score by Bryce Dessner and what it takes to portray a life of quiet endurance. This is your masterclass in intimate, character-driven filmmaking. So do subscribe to us so you can get all our latest podcasts. We've had some amazing guests on recently, and we've got more amazing guests coming up. Thank you, everyone, for all your love on the Edgar Wright podcast last week. Go and listen to that one if you haven't, talking all about Running Man and his career as a director. Right, let's get to it. This is Dom Lenoir. Talking to, first of all, Felicity Jones, then Kerry Condon, and straight after that will be director Clint Bentley. After that will be Joel Edgerton, diving into the world of acting, filmmaking, creating, and of course, Train Dreams. Enjoy.
I had the pleasure of seeing this in TIFF, and it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, what a soulful, amazing film.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about how you first came across the script, what your first impressions were on the read.
It was, I think, we both found it was just brilliantly written and it was actually quite a quiet period. It was, there's been a lot of turbulence in the industry and coming out of COVID and strikes and it was sort of towards the end of that period that then Train Dreams, my agent sent through Train Dreams and I read it through and this is really good storytelling, just really impactful. It's very difficult telling a story over, spanning decades. But Clint and Greg had managed to do that so successfully. So then it was about navigating Gladys and finding my way into her, knowing that I knew there was something really special in the storytelling.
I think those kind of like old style cinema stories where it's like these grand odysseys. I mean, that's the kind of thing I used to love watching growing up, and it's rarer in cinema these days and when you do go through across someone's entire life, there's a sort of depth and a layer to things, and it's all encompassing. It really is nice to sort of get into that.
Well, that's what cinema can kind of do, isn't it? That's what it's brilliant at, is you can time travel and you can go anywhere. The imagination is unleashed. And as you say, traditionally, that's what films seem to do much more. And that's sort of what we're returning to in this moment where cinema's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And what about yourself? What was your sort of first impressions on the script?
So reading the script, I found that it was kind of how I see the world. I'm big into nature. I truly believe that we are all connected, and I think we're all that trees should have rights, in many ways. And so it was kind of how I see the world. And there was also a beauty in little things. Just I knew by the way it was written that Clint kind of saw beauty in simple things. So it was very moving. And I just wanted to be in it because just the whole thing was so beautiful. Like it was just a rare occurrence that you're 100% sure that you want to be in it. So the nature aspect, and then all the people that were attached to the movie, that was a big draw.
Pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's important, because you are going to be spending time with people, and then also when they're great, that they're going to do a great job.
So, one of my favorite bits when you're having that sort of initial conversation, you've just hired your actors, you're discussing the characters for the first time. What was that sort of conversation with Clint for both of you? Because I'm really interested in whether you're talking psychology, where the character came from, all of those interesting kind of tidbits from the script.
Yeah, I mean, with this project, it was very much, understanding what it would be like living that life. What were these pioneer women doing? How did they survive? And there was I read a great diary of a woman who'd lived a similar life to Gladys, and it was her and her daughter, and it was just the two of them. Her husband had died, and it was about their adventures traveling together and, fishing and having to hunt and cook their, food they'd found themselves. So that was one aspect of it. And then the book was incredibly, it was a really beautifully written book. So rare you get a great book and a great script. And then there were just lines in that. There was something about Gladys that she'd grown up in a patch of sunlight. And that she had you could feel that she was weathered from being outside. And so instinctively, obviously, that leads to this is someone who's really comfortable in the outdoors, who really has experience and has inherited, a farming experience. So I guess I find I'm coming at it from all different angles.
I mean, that's great. I mean, did you sort of dip into the book then, or was it?
All the time, coming back to it. And there were little moments.
Yeah, because it's such a rich tapestry of, tiny moments of experience and being in that kind of wilderness, and just understanding the culture and the people and the farming life, I suppose. I mean, because that's quite alien to us now when we're living in this kind of century.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Kerry, what about yourself?
Funnily enough, when we were talking about it last night, when I did the call with Clint, I kind of knew I was going to do the movie anyways, because again, the script is so beautiful. So it was really just a kind of okay. And we didn't talk about the part at all. I actually talked about the fact that his dad was a jockey, because I've got racehorses, ex-racehorses, and I used to race exercise racehorses. So I just bonded over that, and the fact that he'd made a movie about a jockey, I was like, sold. I'm in. So yeah, we basically just talked about horses.
Amazing.
And then segued on to, Claire, and she doesn't judge Robert and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll see you in a few weeks or whatever. So yeah, it was more chit-chatty, getting to know him as a person, which, in all fairness to me, is kind of important too, right? Because you do want to get to know the person, the director as a person.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You're with
the quality of your time that you're going to have is dependent on that person. Yeah, it's massive trust.
Because I suppose it's about, the actor-director relationship really is about being able to communicate with each other, understanding where you're coming from, I suppose, in a lot of cases. Why have you got this point of view? Why do you see things like this? How can we find a sort of common ground?
And are they going to leave you alone to let you do your job?
Ultimately, that's what you realize. The more you do it, you're just don't get into my grid, whatever.
Yeah.
Something.
Right, it's true.
Yeah, just trust that, we can get on with it.
Yes. Yeah. And obviously you've got pretty good track records. Let's talk about the location, because I love location shooting. I think that's one of the most exciting things you can do, is especially locations like this where it's just magnificent, inspiring scenery. how does that inform your character when you're shooting? Like, first day you arrived on set, what was that like? That kind of experience?
Well, so much of it for our scenes was around that cabin, and Clint actually was really involved Joel and I, a lot in, seeing images of the cabin. We talked with the set designer and building that homeliness that Gladys would have brought to it. And then going and just we didn't kind of heavily rehearse it, but we just track the scenes and walk them through with Adolfo. So they're all just little moments that accumulate that then make you feel very comfortable when there's a camera in your face. And so that it was quite a kind of just a gentle way into it, but you're gradually building your confidence.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because it's intimidating. The first time you come on set, it's just like you've got this massive infrastructure. You've got all the cameras, you've got lights, you've got hundreds of people, you've got this whole staging. You're in somewhere you've never been before. It's and then amongst that, you're trying to find this creativity, this like honing in on the truth, and trying to create magic whilst it's this kind of machine, isn't it, in a way?
This hadn't lights though, and it didn't have hundreds of people. It was so small.
It was kept nice and
yeah.
Lovely.
So it was, yeah.
Yeah, there is always that combination though of the technical, the camera, sound, everything, all those technical elements coming together with performance. And
it's a symbiosis,
yeah, and it is quite a kind of it's a sensitive process to make that all fuse because you can't have one without the other. So it is. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does in the case of train dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So and what about yourself in terms of?
In terms of the location, yeah. So that was another thing. It makes me sound really lazy, but I was like, I have a farm really close to where we shot. So I was like,
not much of a commute.
Kind of.
Not a hard sell to get there.
Yeah, Kerry lives nearby. I was like, really?
Yeah, I had to fly.
Just ride your horse home.
Yeah. It was
the distances are so short.
Yeah. So it was bizarre to me that I still had to. But yeah, so it's very close to where I have a farm and that was another reason, because that's part of the reason why I have a farm there, because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the trees are humongous and the sunsets are gorgeous. And so, and then it wasn't more the convenience. It was more like it's meant to be.
Yeah.
I was like, that's where you're filming? That's crazy. I'm literally like down the road. Not really literally, but yeah, kind of.
Down the road.
A few days ride over the mountains on your horse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That would be a great way to turn up for work.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So what's your sort of preference in terms of like the rehearsals? And we talked a little bit about having discussions around the character, and you've done the text reading. Do you like to do do you like a sort of a fairly skim through so you keep it fresh for the day? Like how do you both work in terms of, because you can underbake or you can overbake that side of things quite easily, I think.
Depends on the job, doesn't it? A little bit, I suppose. I don't, sometimes when people go, like, we're going to rehearse, and then you're like, you don't even know what rehearsals are. Do you know that have that happen? You're like, it's a waste of time.
How do I rehearse? Yeah.
I feel like increasingly people want to rehearse less now. I feel like years ago, there used to be so much more rehearsal. I don't know why that. Maybe it's a style of.
It's probably a money thing.
Yeah.
Money. Yeah. I mean, that's always a small
That's going to cost us. So we'll take a in the moment approach.
Yeah.
It'll be cheaper. So true.
So let's talk just a little bit about the difference between that. You've both been in Star Wars. As well as this. We had a quick chat in Toronto about this, actually. You're going from Hollywood movies to, prestige indies and all the sort of the territory in between. I'm still mourning your character from Rogue One. That was a real tragedy, but a beautiful film. So how does it, how does it differ? Because I mean, this sounds like a lovely kind of, high end, prestige drama, independent, slightly smaller scale. And then obviously you've got like Star Wars, which is a huge kind of infrastructure. How do you sort of adapt to that? What are some of the, the differences?
What are the differences? Jeez.
I think weirdly there are less differences than it being dependent on the filmmaker and the people involved and the atmosphere they create and you create together. is what sort of dictates your experience of it. I think really, whatever you're doing, you're kind of applying the same rules. It's character first and figuring out who they are and why they're making certain decisions. And then I guess the size of that world differs depending on the story.
Yeah. Do you have any tips or tips of do's and don'ts for directors, throughout all of your years of working in acting? Like some things that are helpful, some things that maybe aren't helpful, or maybe like a great note you can remember from Train Dreams or something else? Because it's nice for our audience because, a lot of us really love working with actors and it's, people get things wrong.
You're not a dictator.
Yes, that's a good one.
It's collaborative and it's about finding great camera people, great sound people, great actors, and everybody working together. And that's the most fun, is when it's all it feels like we're all doing this together, as opposed to
just stand over there.
Yeah,
move like this,
or just not realizing other people might have better ideas than you. Sometimes people do, and that's not me. Doesn't mean that you're not good. It just means that maybe it's a better idea. I suppose being open to collaboration is major. Usually, the best directors are really good at that.
Yeah, I think it's the confidence in who you've employed and letting them do what they need to do.
Yeah, being able to sort of relinquish that control. And be a filter rather than the overarching, this is the way I see it and you need to do it that way.
Yeah, and they're kind of shepherding it.
Yes.
But letting people feel ownership of what they're doing.
Yeah. Any last advice for maybe yourselves aspiring many years ago before you were, a fantastic success?
For aspiring actors.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's a hard one.
I feel like you're both just such authentic actors. I feel like that's what your appeal is. I mean, that's my take. Like your characters always have immense grit, and there's you're just always on side with whatever you're trying to do in the scene, and you've kind of got this, I don't know, a complexity, and you can bring in sadness very well, especially in this one. So I suppose that's what makes me think, these are successful actors for these reasons. But be interested to know what your sort of take is on.
Well, I think one of the hardest parts of acting is putting yourself on tape, And I remember thinking that was such a huge part of our lives, was doing that, and then finding someone who'd come and read with you, and then you'd be editing it, and then it started being you'd be sent sort of 8 scenes of 4 pages of dialogue, and it takes me ages to learn lines, ages. You'd sort of be overwhelmed, and then you wouldn't even know if you're going to get the job in the end. And it's really tough that that process. I have so much empathy for that, and I remember thinking, I'll do anything. I just don't want to have to keep doing that. Whatever it takes. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. When they ask, when they loads of pages, it's
I know.
Oh, come on. Hang on, I directed for
you. Yeah, exactly. I'll make it at home. Goodness sake.
But I suppose for an actor, an advice would be and I know it would try and find some other interest. So when you're not working, you're not spiraling.
Oh, yeah. You need that with everything.
Yeah.
Something away from your work that you really
that
love.
Can keep you busy, kind of. Or you'll just get jealous of people that are working, and then you'll get all toxic.
Yeah,
Fine.
You'll be like this. They're doing that.
I know.
They're wearing that.
Go hiking.
Or just find other things to keep you busy.
Builds your life. Yeah.
Well, lovely advice to finish on. Congratulations again. It is one of my favorite movies of the year.
Thank
It's
you.
exactly the kind of drama I love watching. And wish you both the best and keep enjoying your work.
Thank you very
Fantastic.
much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Filmmakers Podcast.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's lovely to see you again. How's everything been since TIFF, where we briefly caught up in Toronto?
It's been great. It's lovely to be back. It's funny because we premiered at Sundance and then kind of had a little bit we came back out a little bit more at TIFF. But now it's the first time we're really exposing the film to audiences, and a lot of people are seeing it. And it's really lovely. It feels like this thing that we've been sitting with for a while, that now we're able to like bring back out to people.
And it's a surreal experience, right? I mean, Sundance, Toronto.
Yes.
I mean, they're the biggest festivals in the world. And it's your movie that's showing that. I mean, was that like an exciting moment? I mean, I'm sure it was like when you get the clap at the end of that's like peak.
Yeah. No, it's very surreal. It feels like very, I don't know. It feels very meaningful. I think especially like to go back to Sundance with the film and to premiere it there. That's where Jockey premiered, but I didn't get to go because it was during the pandemic times, so it was virtual.
Yeah, that's awful.
It was 2021, and then to go back to TIFF after we had Sing Sing there the year before, and then now London. I always wanted to play this festival and never was able to. Like, just didn't have a film here, and so it all moves so fast and you don't realize how surreal it is until you stop and kind of take stock of it, which I guess is life in general.
Yeah, I mean, the whole junket thing is just, it's chaos, isn't it? I mean, you're just going from one country to another. It's interviews, it's premieres. It's kind of a bit of a whirlwind, but it's a good whirlwind.
Yeah, it's a great whirlwind. It means it's a ton, like you're traveling around a lot, but it means that people want to talk about your film, and that's like a little blessing. There's nothing to complain about.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about how this sort of came about, how it started. What was the first sort of inception of like this is my next movie?
Yeah, it came from actually Jockey playing at Sundance, and there were some producers who had the rights to this book, and they were looking for a filmmaker to adapt this novella, Train Dreams. And I was a huge Dennis Johnson fan. And had been for a very long time. This was actually the first book of his that I read, and it's what like started my love of his writing. And then when they asked me to take a look at it and think about it as a movie, and I did, and I fell in love with it all over again. And really, it just felt like this beautiful celebration of a small but resonant life, and I really felt like I really felt like if I could bring that to screen, and it just felt, in just reading the book again, it felt so like it could be very rich cinematically. And so I was like kind of gearing myself up. You always have to like hold yourself back when you're writing a film, because you're like, this might never get made. Like, there's a lot of the Boulevard of Broken Dreams is long in the film world. And yet this one, I was just like, I really hope we get to make this one, because it could be so special.
So I mean, how did they get commissioned by? Because obviously Black Bear and Netflix. Like, how did you go from script that you weren't sure about to the biggest American institutions? Yeah,
quite by accident, I think. I don't know. It's like, no, we had worked on the script for a while with these producers at Kamala Films, and they were the ones who had the rights to the book. We all worked on it internally, and then Greg and I had made. My producing and co-writing partner, Greg Quidar, we'd made Sing Sing, which Greg directed with Black Bear. And then at the end of that, Teddy over at Black Bear was like, what else do you guys have? And I showed him this script, and he fell in love with it. And then we all made it together quite independently, shot it in Washington State, and then premiered it at Sundance, and it got in on a working cut. So then it was a rush to finish the film in time for Sundance. And then Netflix saw it there, and their passion for it was so infectious for the film, and they just got what it was trying to do, and they had a really beautiful plan for how they wanted to bring it into the world, and so we partnered up there.
Amazing. I mean, that's what you want, isn't it? You sort of you have the joy of creating and collaborating, and then you get the major studio at the end, and then it gets the massive release.
Yeah, it's you hope that people will see it. I think you just hope that you find a partner who's passionate about it, and who's not just going to kind of run it through the mill, churn it out, and we found that here, and it's really lovely.
So let's talk about the writing. Just going back to the writing side, obviously, you're a very experienced writer. What was the process in terms of picking apart where you were going to start in the book? What you were going to use, what you weren't going to use. Like, how did you sort of initially start to plot that?
It was initially in like going back and reading it and thinking about it as a movie and then stepping back from it and just kind of reflecting on it. I found a shape pretty quickly for what I felt like it could be, in terms of the kind of like narrative shape of it, and what I wanted it to feel like, and all those kind of big picture things that you hope to find. And then when it got into like the nuts and bolts of doing that, of like Greg and I actually writing it and trying to figure out how to do that, that was a very long, laborious process, because it's a very delicate story, you know, and it doesn't have a lot of the big plot machinations that usually, like, you know, a second act turn and things like that, or an inciting incident. Like, it doesn't have those things that like kick off the story. And that's I think for me what felt special about it and what felt exciting about if we could pull it off, but it's also very difficult. And then it was just, you know, a process of like, I read the book like 5 times, you know, like marking up every page, like making sure I could hopefully like understand it as well as I could, and then just let it alone, you know, and like left it and let the script become its own thing. Cause it really felt like it's such a special book, but it couldn't, you know, the movie needed to be its own thing.
Yeah.
And I needed to be with the movie needed to be very loyal and faithful to the spirit of the book, but then kind of leave the rest behind.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, it's interesting you said about the, you know, the structure side, because I felt like it was quite a well-structured movie. I mean,
thank you.
Obviously, well done. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
But I suppose you know, there's a character who gets thrown off a bridge at the start of the movie. That sort of, to me, almost felt like the inciting incident.
Yeah.
And then there's like the family, and then the second act bit, I suppose, is the family and the fire and all that kind of thing. So there were these key kind of events that definitely sort of glued it together. So they weren't like really obvious out of the book in the initial drafts, or was it like finding all the other bits that connected it?
No, it's not that. It's just like, you articulated it well. And I think it's just like, it's a movie that's not about one thing, and it's a book that's not about one thing. And so in thinking about it as a movie, it's not like, okay, this guy gets thrown off the bridge and he's complicit in that in some way, in a small way. But the movie's not about that, but it is about it, right? And then the real inciting incident, I think, that we found in the edit, was like when he meets Gladys.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that like kind of like animates his life and animates the first half. Right. And then the second half is like, okay, when you've had great loss, like, how do you move on from that? And what do you do? How do you pick up the pieces of your life and kind of move ahead without losing those things or leaving behind those things that were dear to you. But I think that the tricky part was just trying to make it feel like it's a story moving forward rather than just a bunch of incidents in a person's life, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a sort of a sweepingness to it, which I think sort of propels into that. But I think that, you know, the mood of it is a big part in how that kind of feels. And we'll sort of go on to the cinematography and the music of it later.
Yeah.
What's the process in terms of you working with Greg? I mean, you know, going back to the Sing Sing, that was like a real like tear things apart, build them back together, tear things apart type process. What have you sort of learnt from that film in terms of how you write together and how you structure, or maybe what works and doesn't work?
Yeah, I think with you know, with both Sing Sing and Jockey, in terms of the way we approach those scripts, they were very open to the world, you know, and it was like finding a structure and an approach and a mood that can hold the thing together, and then using that as the bed that the film will lay in, and then being open to the world coming into that and being open to surprises and actually leaving space. And Greg did a magnificent job on Sing Sing in terms of leaving space for surprises to come in. And so with this one, that was the thing that was a bit tricky to try and figure out how to do, because not only it's a film, it's a different beast. You know, we're not using a lot of people who had actually lived this. It's a period piece. You've got to structure everything and plan everything, and your art department is asking you, well, what year is it? So they know what type of phone is in here, you know? And yet within all that structure and rigidity, like that was the process where I was like, how do we preserve that openness to magic. And we can talk about that with like Adolfo's work and all of that. But really with Greg and I, like in the writing of it, it was just, we went out to Idaho, the panhandle of Idaho, where Dennis Johnson wrote the book and where the story's set. Met people there, met old logging families, met people of the Kootenai tribe who are like reintroducing sturgeon into the river out there, and really just tried to like drink in the world. So that in terms of writing it, in writing the script, it wasn't just like a secondhand telling of something that Dennis already did, trying to understand that world a bit so that like new things could come from it, you know?
I find like that's like such a big factor once you've done that initial draft. If there is a place you can go, just the richness that you get, just, you know, the sounds, like what's the 100%. Sun like, what's the wind like, you know, how do the people talk? Are they friendly? Are they not friendly?
Yeah.
Like, all of that stuff is like so important, and it gives everything like a realness, but like a kind of a charm, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're an artist and you're trying to represent something, you need to see it for yourself so that you can, the things that you notice that you're going to put in there are the things that are going to make whatever you're making special. Right. And yeah, you're exactly right in terms of all the little idiosyncrasies and things. That there's a shot early in the film of a huge fish hanging down from a pole, you know, that they've pulled out of the river. This like 10-foot sturgeon. And that came from just like being in the little town of Bonners Ferry, Idaho, being in the museum there and seeing all these pictures of that, like all these pictures from that time of these people like hanging up a 10-foot, 11-foot sturgeon. And then also the sadness that those fish don't exist anymore because they've all been overfished out of there.
I mean, that's a really interesting one, because like that's something I would never think of as a writer, is like, let's put a 10-foot fish up, or someone, or someone like puts it in a movie and it's like it isn't based on anything, and it's like this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't
right
because they've just like plucked it out of thin air. But it's those things that are like unusual, that you wouldn't have seen before, that I think really brings the movie alive.
Thank you,
and I think that's, you know, great details.
Thank you.
So how do you actually co-write? Like, do you do like scene? You both do a scene, then you cross-write it, or?
It's a lot of, we do a lot of, because it's two people writing it, you know, you want it to feel like a whole piece and not like two people writing it. And so there's a lot of organization and like structure work that we do early on, and making outlining. And we come up with, at first, like a 10 to 15 page document that's just like a piece of, this is like a short story. Okay. It's like the movie in prose as much as you can. Like each paragraph is a scene. And we just write it like that to, like, as much as we can get it structured out without, like, you know, without killing it, because you want there to be surprises that come out of the actual writing of it. And then we each take sections and then we pass them back and forth along the way. And then just kind of go through it. And I think like, the nice thing is, like, we always know who's directing it, you know? And so that person is kind of the filter through which everything runs. And to make sure it's like fitting of a tone that person is going to make the film in.
Yeah, I really like that sort of cross-writing thing. I've done that with like a script book. And it's like you things that you would never think of as your own writer. And, you know, maybe you have a really good idea for picturing the scene, but like you don't quite know how the characters speak, or, you know, vice versa. And getting that other texture from someone else's, voice. Like, what is it? Maybe, I know it's a huge summary or generalization, but like, what are some of the things maybe that you and Greg bring separately, maybe in terms of like your writing voices?
No, it's a good question. And it is the excitement of writing with somebody else, that they're going to bring things that you wouldn't think of, you know? And I think one example in this film is the friendship between Grenier and Ignatius Jack after the fire happens. That was something that, like, I would not have thought of that as much, or as much of an important element as it is. And that was something Greg really tuned into. And then we built that out. But yeah, there's little things like that you're like, oh, that's really nice. And I never would have thought of that.
So let's talk about the visual side, because it is a very atmospheric film.
Yeah.
Where did you start in terms of building the look and how you're going to shoot it, and what was your process for that?
It was really hand in hand with Adolfo. It's funny, we made when we were first started talking about it, we just talk about story first, and Adolfo's got a brilliant story mind. And I think the great thing about him as a DP, and I could spend the rest of this time talking about how great he is as a DP, is he comes from a story place first, and he comes from a natural place first. And I think he's like, it's very special because he's not trying to impose some will on a story of like, I need it to look like this because I'm thinking about this lens or whatever, or this piece of equipment that I want to put on it. It really comes from like, what makes the most sense for the story itself. That said, when we were thinking about it, we each like made a deck to send the other person of like what we were each thinking. Yeah. Of like images and inspirations and things to avoid and traps we didn't want to fall into and things like that. And a big crossover in that, like we sent it back and forth, and there was like a lot of not only films that were the same that we had pulled, but images from films that we had pulled.
Okay.
Tarkovsky was a big crossover in that, where we were both thinking about that, just visually, like the way he handles things, and the way he handles a scene, and the way he gets into it, and how he treats nature, and there's so many things like that like,
it feels very expansive, like the way that it shows the landscapes.
Yeah,
they never feel small. I don't know. That was my initial like feeling. Like other than the really like dynamic sort of world, unusually lit and the surreal dream sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the way that nature was captured. I mean, let's shoot wide. Let's make sure that there's a lot of the scale that we're kind of we're showing, because it pioneers, isn't it? It's not the connection that we have now.
No, it's great. Thank you. And it's something that like that was really important early on in two ways. One, we wanted nature to be its own character in the movie, and that these trees have their own life going, and the horses have their own life going, and the people have their own lives going, and they're all intermingling with each other. It's not just that the people have their lives going and then nature is a backdrop for that, and so the world is very interconnected, and nature is as important as the people. That was one big thing. The other is exactly what you said with the expansiveness. The story is very intimate and epic at the same time. And we wanted to both have a film that could hold both of those things in the same hand, which is like these small moments with the family that feel very intimate and very sweet. And then also a huge forest or a huge lake with mountains in the background with these ancient stumps, and that world that he's inhabiting is very expansive around him. Just to get that scale of nature across, and the scale of like this very open world. And that even went into like what frame size, what aspect ratio we chose and all of that.
Yeah. Cause I mean, even the river where the homestead is kind of set up, you don't see, it's not all about the mountains in that, but it's just the fact that you've got this sort of meandering river that just feels like you're in Alaska or something. Immediately like makes you think, oh, this is not near civilization.
Yeah.
And that sort of, really serves a good purpose. So, what was some of the other, were there any other references? Like for me, like it almost feels like a sort of brother film to Assassination of Jesse James, in terms of just because it's what you said about the small people on an epic scale. Like I haven't seen any other films that have done it as well as this.
Thank you.
Like the sort of cinematicness of people's struggle that really is like grounded and kind of minimal but epic at the same time. Were there any other sort of things in the genre that you looked at, or was it like, okay, just let's craft this from images in my mind? Or
no, I mean there were definitely images we looked at. He pulled a bunch of Dorothy Lang images, like photography. It was something that we looked at a lot, and not there's some of the ones that you immediately come to mind, but he was pulling others that like were there are a few images of like people in crowds. But these people felt very lonely in the crowds. And there was a bit of that and like feeling this space. There was Jules and Jem was another film that was very inspiring just in terms of like the feeling the lightness of time that then becomes heavy as the film goes along. But it was a bit nerve wracking at first because like with Jockey, I had a lot of like 1-to-1 comps where I was like, if I can feel like this Kurostami film or this, Koreeda film, like that would be great. And like, and this one, I didn't have that. And we were
lots of piecemeal and sort of creating something new.
Not one thing. Yeah. And that was a little nerve wracking at first, but then we just like leaned into it. But we wanted there's some big films like Assassination of Jesse James and Days of Heaven and There Will Be Blood that you almost like, they're huge inspirations. And I love them as films. And yet you don't want to look to them too much because you want to get out from under their shadow because they're so great. Yeah. And you don't want to kind of be just regurgitating what they're doing.
So I mean, one thing that really makes this stand out as original, I think, is the surreal sort of dream sequences and how you handled that. I mean, one of my favorite shots is when the train sort of goes across the Bridge River and it's got the lights inside.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just sort of
magnificent. I love that. Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of those, like, when do you use the dreams? Like, not overdoing them.
Yep.
How do you link them to the character? Like,
what is the language of the dream?
What's the language of the dreams? Like, so how was that sort of conversation on the, the cinematography and also in the script?
And the cinematography, it was much like we played around with a few things. We had some rules set in place, like all the early stuff when we're seeing him as a kid, kind of the memories, those are all on sticks. We had all that on sticks or dollies, like it wasn't handheld. Most of the movie then is handheld. And we did some dream stuff that didn't actually work out. And in terms of our approach to it. And then it became that was much more of a conversation with, our editor, Parker Laramie, once we got in the edit, where it was like Parker and I just trying to figure out those exact questions. Like what triggers a dream? Is it a dream or a memory? What's the difference? Is it a premonition? And what is the language of those that feels very specific to them, but yet integrated into the movie? And then it also became then our sound designer, Lee Sullivan, is an amazing collaborator as well. And not somebody who it's not a case of just giving him the movie at the end and saying, all right, mix it. He's very integral in those conversations as well and building different soundscapes as we're editing that then we're integrating. And so it was really just a process of trial and error and really like calibrating it as it went along. But I wanted those dreams to feel kind of staccato and almost like I was looking more to like commercials, in terms of how to cut those together.
Okay. Yeah.
And music videos rather than the rest of the film looking to like film.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's mini tone of something else that, you sort of plonk into the correct places. What didn't work in terms of that side of things?
Oh, there were these. It was just it didn't translate through in a way that I wished it had. But there were a lot of places that we filmed by themselves, like places where they had been. For example, they're laying by the river, and when he proposes to her, and she says, "We're already married." Then we shot that. They're laying on a blanket and all of that. And then we cleared them out at the very end and just got a shot of that space without them in it. And there's the beautiful field where they're standing in the flowers and where they have their kiss. And that was another one where we just cleared them out and like just shot it with their stuff still there, but them not there. And so there were a few of those but it didn't end up translating, unfortunately.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about working with your incredible actors.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've got a sort of dream team really there.
Oh my God.
With those three and always the ensemble as well.
Yeah.
What was your initial kind of conversations about the character that you had with, Joel, Kerry and Felicity?
Joel, we talked a lot about, I think the family component was a big thing that we talked a lot about. And we've got kids around the same age, Joel and I, and Felicity as well. We've all got kids right around that like 5 and under age. And so I think we all found a lot of resonance in that and just trying to portray this like simple life, but a beautiful life, and trying to portray the sweetness that is like, living with your family. And that's a real blessing. With Felicity, the other thing we talked about with Joel a lot was just him as a character, not needing to be always active, that like in his inactivity, that's how he moves through the world. And so Joel was like brilliant and very generous at not being an actor who needed to make every scene about him. And so you could have Bill Macy
He just exists.
He exists and he's there and he's witnessing, and that's enough at times. And I think it took a lot of courage for him as an actor, for Joel to lean into that, but he did it beautifully. Felicity, she got a draft of the script, and then we had a long conversation, and she had a ton of like beautiful ideas and thoughts about how to expand that character. And that character of Gladys really expanded a lot. In the book, she's like a couple paragraphs. She's not very much, and her interior life isn't there much at all. But like, and I expanded a bit when Greg and I were working on it. But like with Felicity, we really like brought it out, and that's because of her. And then Kerry, there was a moment, it didn't make it into the final film, but there was a line we had in the script, which was like she and Joel, or she and Grenier, they felt like old friends. Like maybe they had met in a past life or something. And she just really latched onto that. And
it really feels like that, actually.
It does feel that way. I mean, they are old friends. They worked together a long time ago on Animal Star on Ned Kelly.
It felt like a reunion.
Yeah.
Like a new reunion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that thing when you meet somebody, that's what I wanted to get across with that. That felt special about that scene is like when you meet somebody and you're like, I feel like we've met before some other time, and you just get along very quickly. And then the rest of the cast is just like incredible with John Deal and Bill Macy. And
I think it's we discussed with Kerry and Felicity earlier, like it's finding lots of small things that they do that is their character, because obviously you're shrinking back to this pioneer world, and there's not millions of things that they're doing. So it all has to be internal. It has to be in, what do they do every day? Like, what do they think about? Which I suppose is quite different because they have different considerations to what we do in our sort of time. They don't have phones. They're
not catching up on
They don't
email.
have hundreds of people that, news is probably like a bit more of a far gone thing. So, I like that sort of inner depth.
Yeah.
It certainly works. So just going into the composing, because incredible
Bryce
score.
It is amazing.
Let's talk about that. Like, how did you music, you're using it to make such an amazing atmosphere that goes with the visuals and the mood and the kind of melancholy.
It was something that like I knew that the music would be like a driving force in the film. I didn't know what exactly it would sound like, but I just feeling that like how the film needed to flow, knew that like the score would be integral. I put together a long playlist that like I do for every film. And just to give the crew and to give the cast and people like that, to people who are working on the film, to give a sense of like, here's the tone that I'm going for. None of these things will probably end up in the film, but like, here's the tone that I feel. And I gave that to Bryce, but Bryce really started very early from just like, we were sending him dailies. He read the script. Obviously he read the book. We talked a lot, and then he just started recording things. And it was really exciting to like get those first things through where he was just writing off of the energy that he was feeling from just the material rather than the edit. And it really like, we talked about again, that like that paradox of it's an intimate film, but also an epic film. And they can be very small. And there's some like compositions that he has that are just like him playing a guitar, him playing piano that are very soft and sweet. And then there's some big stuff where it gets very, very grand with a symphony. And it's really, I could talk all day about this score.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So I think we've got to wrap up, but
Okay,
any one like quick thing you learned from this movie, if there's one thing that sort of pops to mind, like a 30-second soundbite.
I just learned to like listen to the movie more, like, and I think like, and be confident that it would bring itself together if you listen to it. I showed it a lot to people along the way, and I got a lot of notes along the way. And I think like as a director, sometimes that can be scary. But with this one, it really like, I found that like, that was how the film could tell me what it wants is by exposing it to other people and getting notes. And it really was like crafted that way. So yeah, I'm going to take that to the next one.
Amazing. Well, I mean, thanks for joining us again. And
thanks very much. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. I mean, what a film. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Best of luck with it all.
Thank you.
So welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, massive congratulations on Train Dreams. It's, a brilliant central performance from yourself.
Thank you.
And it's a really nice, soulful, old cinema type film. It sort of brings me back to the heyday of good dramas.
Good.
So
I agree.
How are you feeling about the whole thing? Like doing the premieres in TIFF and here and
I love the film for a number of reasons. I'm really happy that it came into my world. But I always love the idea that you could be involved in something on a work level. For me, it's always about the process, and the process was beautiful. But the result, it also helps if the result is good. And I went into it knowing that I felt like this film was quite meaningful in its philosophy on life. And its ruminations on the question of what is the meaning of a life, not answering the question of what is the meaning of life, but talking about meaning within life. And now I think that the film will have meaning for people in their own lives, so that they can reach in, reflect their own experience, and leave the cinema maybe with a different cadence or energy, which often for people is about the realization of cherishing the things that are really, really important to you, which for most people is not the things you have, but the people that you have.
Yeah. And I think that's why this is such a moving film, because it spans your character's whole life, and it does feel like this sort of grand sweeping odyssey. And, you go through love, through loss, through, tragedies in work, this sort of pilgrimage lifestyle, like building the house. I mean, it's got literally everything, like having children.
Yeah.
And, the sort of the bookmark of it. And it is, life is it's got so many things that happen. And, often we don't get to delve into the sort of the real depth of that.
Yeah. It's hard to view your life, in hindsight.
Mm.
Or to have a crystal ball about what are the experiences that I'm going to, tick off before I'm gone. But when you are older, you do kind of look back at this sort of weird journey you had that is not exactly the journey you might have expected to have. But it's also hard to pull back and realize that you're living your life right now. And to participate in it right now is very hard for a lot of us. I know it's very hard for me. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm doing a thing and my mind is elsewhere. And it's, quite often when I'm with my kids, it's like, remind myself that it's not just okay, but it's almost sort of potent and important just to be there rather than be there while being elsewhere, if that's, makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think that's why, going to the movies is a great kind of experience, because you get to be present and you get to watch an actor that's hopefully present. And you switch off from all that other stuff, because, in the time of Train Dreams, there wasn't phones, there wasn't when you finish your shift on the train, you'd go home and you spend time with your family, and that would be that zone that you kind of enter in. And now it's very hard, because you've got so many different projects flying around. You're flying around to different places across the world, and it's very everything's pulling you in different directions, and it is quite hard to focus on one thing and be in that kind of, this is family time, or this is watch a movie time, or I've got to go for a hike or something.
There's so much stimulation in the world. It's funny, you watch Train Dreams and Robert stares at a chainsaw at some point. And it's like he's staring at, AI.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, shit, it's a whole new world.
By it. Yeah.
A steam engine and this. And, it's like, oh, what'll they think of next? Like, things are moving so quickly. And, of course, we got all that stimulation now and distractions and all. So, but it really is still, if you have the agency to take a breath, and it doesn't even mean you need to disrupt too much. It's just like, again, I'm guilty of this, but can you actually just not have your phone at the dinner table? Can you sit and watch a silly children's film with your kids? Can you actually have just a normal conversation with your family without anything else whizzing and banging and pinging in the background?
Yeah.
And it is very possible, because all you have to do is choose to do it.
Yeah, but it's a strong
Saying I'm the best
choice.
at it. Yeah. It is a strong choice, especially when your phone's buzzing and this is going on and that's going on. It's like, and I'm technologically, relatively up to speed, but I'm also looking at each new technology coming along going, is this something I'm on board with? Like, do I just become that old dude who's like, that's too hard for me? And I'm like, I think I'm just going to have to for the sake of the kids, you know?
Yeah. But also, I mean, it's a different generation, isn't it? We love going to the cinema. We love experiencing things in that medium, maybe sitting around and watching and movies and sort of generations below, it's more like YouTube and other things. So I think we have to kind of keep bringing that medium to the next generations and making sure that they do see films like this.
I do wonder though, isn't it, that movies, are roughly a certain length, and they continue to be. And while we're getting these more shorter form things and 6-second kind of TikToks and 30-second TikToks and other things that are of a similar nature, is like there's still this desire even amongst young people to go watch a movie that's, at least 90 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer. You don't want it to be too long unless it's rich and really, really full of great story. But, there's a form to it that I think people are willing. The sad thing is, though, with a lot of them is like people are still like,
I know,
they're watching, they're running 2 tracks at the same time, texting and watching. And
yeah,
I'm always like, if I'm at the cinema and I see people's like phone light up, I'm just like, guy in whatever row B, seat 12 is dead to me. Yeah, you're dead to me, pal.
Yeah, I agree. Like cinema, there's no exceptions. Like you just be.
And I'm really against talking in cinema.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a common thing.
Like to constant commentary.
Yeah.
Why would he go in there? What's you going to do next? I'm like, just watch a movie, please shut up.
So let's talk a little bit about Clint and his conversations with your character, because he's a character that he doesn't say, tons and tons of pages of dialogue, which, is fascinating to watch. It means that you obviously have to do a lot of internalizing and find that inner life and make that interesting, which I love to watch that when it's done well. And I think in this one, it certainly is. But like when you first read the script, were your thoughts like, okay, this is going to be a challenge, or this is exciting, or, and then how did that go into conversations with Clint?
Well, I think nonverbal performances can be very compelling, but they certainly take a certain extra focus in a way, because words can often be a kind of a dance around things.
Yeah.
But there's an honesty to conveying things without words, because there's no. I guess words can be a distraction. Often, there's what you say, there's what you really mean by what you say, and then there's stuff that you're saying when the silence is going on. And Robert lives in that third thing.
Because it's things to hide behind, isn't it? Like, as people, and I suppose on another scale as an actor, like you can kind of put up a few layers to deflect, which is obviously the idea of it.
Yeah, but with Robert, there's this sense of purity that is like, wasn't looking for any flaw in him. He's just a good man, honest, non-violent, trying to, or thinking he's doing the right thing in every moment. And when he doesn't do things, when he does things that he thinks are maybe not right, like putting his hand on this Chinese worker who's, violence occurs, he feels the weight of guilt for these things, but I really trusted the fact that there's so much of me in this character, in that I know what it's like to be a husband. I know the joy of falling in love. I know the anxiety and nervous joy around being a father, and the kind of concerns around hoping that they love me and that I'll be good to them and I can protect them, and what would happen if something bad happened, it's my biggest fear. So everything that Robert experiences, and detachment from family for work, they're all things I know, and that I could come to work going, all right, I'm not asking myself to pretend something I have no idea about. So I felt very much like I could just bring myself to set and just but pretend I was doing a different job.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what makes a good performance, isn't it? Sort of grounding it in something that's personal and real.
You have to, I think, find a connection.
Yeah. Yeah,
to
definitely.
it, hopefully.
In terms of your conversation with Clint and maybe like the source material, just as another layer on top of that, like the era, what it was like, the day-to-day conversations with people, how did that kind of develop in terms of adding on to what we just discussed?
Well, I think one of the things you try and do with period films is research what you shouldn't do.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
There's certain etiquette and there's certain, I was really interested, for example, the scene where I meet Gladys. We're told by the narration, which is a really good guide to Robert's journey because he's so nonverbal, that Gladys, the women at this period didn't really do things like forwardly introduce themselves to men. So we're already told that this is unorthodox. And I tip my hat to her, and then she offers her hand and I shake her hand and I look at her hand, which is a sign that this is unusual, that I'm shaking her hand the way I would shake a man's hand. So these things are about making sure that you go, what is the etiquette of the time? To me, I wasn't so worried about fitting in as a logo, belonging in that world. I felt like that felt like a natural thing for me. It's like, make sure I knew how to use the equipment.
Yeah.
Make sure I didn't look like a fool.
Amateur.
Yeah, but I feel comfortable in nature. More importantly, I just wanted to make sure that the relationships felt right, and those aspects of making sure I don't overstep or modernize something too much in the vernacular, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, being in those kind of like locations and nature is just spectacular. I mean,
some people are terrified of it.
Really?
I'm terrified. I'm more terrified of putting on a crisp suit, pretending I was like a corporate banker or something.
Yeah,
that being in the woods and trudging around in mud and getting in rivers and stuff feels good to me. I just feel comfortable doing that. But yeah, it's funny how, different horses, different courses,
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, I was on a hike yesterday and just in Surrey Hills, and it's just beautiful sunshine and views. And that naturally does make you present and kind of, I don't know, makes you take a step back, I feel like, from
I
the city.
think something actually about watching a film about nature set in wilderness. I'd be really interesting to get some sort of brain scan of audiences, because I do believe that audiences watch nature, environmental things on screen, and they're reminded that they belong to that place.
Yeah.
Originally, somewhere in their core, they belong to that more than they belong to the city. That we're an animal, and that we're a planet Earth animal. We're not above everything.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it just naturally, it's peaceful, it's relaxing, and it's immersive, and it's kind of awe-inspiring as well. That's the other thing, I think, because it's such you really get a sense of the pioneers and the scale of the world. Like when we're in cities, it's all like condensed and noisy.
Yeah.
So is there anything that like particularly you found like maybe challenging in the character, any scenes or something on the shoot that was just like something you had to like sort of really give some thought or work through with maybe Clint or?
I found sort of putting a harness on some of the emotional aspects of it. It's a big question when you're expressing deeper emotions like grief, and it is how much you let that stuff go, as in how much you allow a character to express those things, particularly when is Robert able to express those things, and if he does, how does he do it? So just having lots of conversations around that stuff, how much Robert could grieve. It's interesting that as soon as he really does, one of the first things that he says afterwards to Ignatius Jack, Nathaniel Arcan's character, is, "I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me." And you're like, dude, what came over you? Is you finally getting sad about the fact you may never see your family ever again? And how men and those kinds of men might have allowed themselves to express those softer emotions. I found interesting. The other one was just like lots of conversations around when Grenier's, spoiler alert here, when he believes he's come across his family again later, and know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is whether this is true, part of the dream of the train dreams, part of the wish fulfillment, or is it in fact somebody else, and he's projecting onto this desire that he can reconnect with his family. So we sort of heady discussions about that before we shot it.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely feels like the sort of crux of the character is, this love and then moving past that into the morning. Joel, it's been a lovely chat. And massive congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
I've always enjoyed your work, loved Warrior, and all the stuff in between. So,
thank you, man.
Yeah, well done.
Well, super listeners, there we have it. What a fantastic episode for you, all about train dreams. First of all, we had Felicity Jones, and then Kerry Condon, and then the director Bentley, and finally we had Joel Edgerton. So we will see you all next Tuesday, as always. And if you are lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.